How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job of the Real Options Training Program. Preaching to everybody coming through, sorry for being late. And what we're going to talk about is why the rent is high and it won't go down, right? And there's an issue that's going on all across this particular country. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on essentially local real estate issues or localized real estate markets to get you to understand that because of what's going on in the housing market, right? It's going to make the rent market continue to go up. And it's very unlikely it's going to go down without some type of massive government intervention into this particular area. So let me know where you're coming from. Let me know that you can hear me. And we're going to go ahead and get into this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of show you mistakes that I made, right, in my own life in dealing with the housing situation that I'm having to deal with because I don't want you to make these same mistakes, right? And I'm going to kind of start with my story. And then we're going to kind of show you what it looks like in these particular localized real estate areas, but it's very unlikely without any kind of government intervention that the rent is going to go down. So people are going to ask me, what's the solution? The solution most likely is that the government is going to have to come in with some level of intervention to deal with the fact that housing keeps going up. Either they're going to, one, build more housing, or they're going to come with some type of stimulus, some type of stipend for people that cannot afford the rent. They're going to have to do either one of the two, because one of the biggest challenges that we're currently seeing is that the housing market keeps going up. The demand is getting a little softer, but it's not totally softening out. As a result, people that normally would rent, right, because they no longer, people that would normally buy because they're tired of renting, they can't afford to buy these houses. What people are having to do to stay competitive as a house buyer now, they never experienced this before. Therefore, many of them are saying, well, you know what, I can't afford the housing market currently, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep renting. The challenge is now, there's so many people trying to rent, right, that the market keeps going up because a lot of the inventory is being taken by people looking to buy. Especially down south, you're getting a lot of what in Florida, we call them snowbirds, the people that come down south for the winter. What they're doing is they're coming down south with cash offers, okay? So the seller of the home, whether it's going to be whoever owns that home, they're very more liable to take those cash offers because they got money in hand as opposed to having to worry about somebody that's going to have to keep paying them. A lot of banks are more viable to take those cash offers, and they're bidding at a very, very competitive level. And that's what I want people to understand. So that's something that we're dealing with down south, is that a lot of people are coming into our particular areas with cash money, cash in hand. And a lot of times they're overbidding on what the market value of a particular property is. They're bidding 20, 30% over just to make sure that they get in. And they're being told to do this by real estate agents. As a result, people that would be looking to buy are being pushed out of the market. So now they're also going into the rental market. And then now what that's doing is pushing the rental market up. And the one thing about the state of Florida, and I tell people this all the time, if you move to Florida, you need to understand that it is not a place where people get paid a lot of money because of the type of labor market we have in the state. Therefore, a lot of people are left out in the cold right now because they was barely making it 3 years ago before the pandemic. Now it's becoming very, very difficult for them to make it. And we're going to kind of talk about that problem because it's impacting pretty much the whole Southeast. And it's a real thing. And we're going to kind of talk about what the politicians are or are not doing to address it. But I'm going to give you my story first, because if you're in this situation, I want to make sure that you don't make the same mistake I made. And the mistake I made was not 100% my fault or because I dropped the ball. It's because I was trying to let a situation develop and it didn't develop. But what I probably should have done was been a lot more aggressive about securing a property while I was there, right? And that was a mistake I made. And I'm going to show you that, because what I want you to do is see the mistakes that I made so you don't make the same mistake. And I'm not one of those people where I'm so prideful, I can't show you what mistakes I made, right? Because I have made mistakes. And so what I try to do is show you the mistakes I made so you don't make these same mistakes, because I don't want you to take the downfall, because I really think even with the rising interest rate, I just think people are going to have to accept that everything costs more, right? And they're going to have to figure out how to adjust around. And I think that we're going to have to kind of modify how we live, because we've been programmed to live a certain kind of way. And I don't think we're going to be able to live like that anymore. But let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about with a actual map, because I'm going to show you where I used to live at in the Atlanta area. So let me get rid of this screen. Let me bring this screen up. Go to the window. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so right now we're looking at Truist Park, right? Which is the baseball stadium in Cobb County. Okay. Now this baseball stadium used to be, right in what we call Summer Hill, right? So this baseball stadium used to be down south in Summer Hill. I lived in Cobb County always. The whole time I lived in Atlanta, I lived in Cobb County. I personally would tell you that this area of Atlanta right here is, to me, the best area of Atlanta to live in. Now, why do I say that? Because if you live in this area, which is what they call Smyrna, Cobb County, it's really southern part of Cobb County, you can get on 285. You got easily to get to the airport, which is here, right? What I used to do is take these local roads to get to the downtown. And then if I wanted to hit this part of Atlanta, I just take 285. So the whole Tucker, this Stone Mountain, this Norcross, Dunwoody, Sandy Springs, I could hit that. I never was in this part of Atlanta. Never was on this side. But it was easy for me to get in the city, whether I want to take 75 in, I want to take these residential roads. I was at East Point College Park a lot with my brother Huff, so it was easy to take 285 to get into there. It was easy to get to the airport from 285, or you could take 20, then take 75 south. And then if I needed to get to the northeast side, it was easy just taking 285 across. So to me, from a strategic standpoint, from a logistics standpoint, living in this area right here was the best area to live in. However, once they put the stadium here, what it did was it made this whole real estate market move up. I'm living in Smyrna and I'm renting a townhome because Atlanta is a big townhome city. So if you look at Metro Atlanta, every older home in the city primarily is a flat level home. All the newer homes are townhomes because you can maximize your size, because a lot that you would put a regular level home on, if you can get a zone for a townhome, you can put 2 properties there, almost like a multi-family now, and now you can get 2 rents. So when they put this park up, they built townhomes all around this park. So pretty much Atlanta is a townhome city, which was different because I'm coming out of Central Florida, Atlanta, down south Miami, Tampa, Florida, and everything we build is split level because it's so hot down south. If you build vertical, you have to worry about the energy cost because you live it on the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor. It can take a lot of energy to keep that place cool. So down south, we build flat because we're trying to dissipate heat. In Atlanta, you're on that mountain. It does get hot in the summer, gets very cold in the winter. So what they do is they just build vertical. So everything in Atlanta is a townhome. So I'm renting a townhome from this dude, cool landlord. And people in my family is telling me you need to think about buying property in Atlanta. But I'm just not even thinking about that. I'm just living my life. I'm working, making money. And I'm not thinking about securing a property. So when I moved there, like in 2012, Smyrna really was not that expensive to live in. A lot of really nice townhomes, you can get there for like $250,000. Other townhomes in this area, that's what we call the Vinings, right? But you take this Atlanta road, a lot of townhomes off this road was maybe $500,000, like $445,000, $450,000, right? But pretty much everything in this Smyrna area, off 280 going down south, you can get a nice townhome there for like maybe $250,000, maybe $300,000, right? But I'm not thinking about buying. I didn't even ask the guy I was renting from. Maybe he was seller finance his home to me. I'm just living life, making money, doing my thing. What happened was they built Truist Park here. When they built Truist Park here, because the Cobb County Chamber of Commerce worked really hard to get this particular thing here, it drove a lot of traffic to this area. It drove a lot of money into this area. And then what I started doing was seeing a lot of new developments rise up, which was brand new. They were pricing them as premier or high price premium developments. And we started seeing the real estate value started to move up. So properties that was $225, now they changed the signage and now they're going for $325, $350. Properties now are saying, well, we're building new townhomes and we're starting in the 400s, right? This is like 2017, 2018. We're starting in the 400s. So then what happened is my landlord came to me and he was like, yo, I'm going to have to raise the rent. And then what he raised it was literally $1,000 more than what I was paying him monthly. And the reason why he did that is because I understand now he could come in with some basic remodeling, remodel that property and go get that new rent because the market has totally changed. Because by them building that park there, they drove in a lot of new demand to want to live in that area. I don't know why people want to live around a baseball stadium, but they did. And one of the differences between Cobb County having a stadium and the stadium being down in Summer Hill was the stadium being in Summer Hill, it didn't drive new demand. Atlanta putting the stadium in Cobb County was one of the first times I seen them put a sports stadium in what I call a nice part of the city. Mercedes-Benz is not in a really nice part of Atlanta. Most sports stadiums are in the cheaper part of the city because the real estate value is very, very low. So they're able to put that big footprint down and not have to pay a lot of money for the real estate. For some reason, they wanted to put Truist Park in a really nice part of the city. And then by them doing that, the real estate values just shot up. So essentially what happened is I got priced out. And what happened is for me to really now stay in the city, I probably would have had to move northern of 75, maybe like Ackworth, which is maybe 35 to 40 minutes north of the city with good traffic. With bad traffic, it'll be maybe 2 hours. And I noticed because my ex lived in Ackworth, and if I got on 75 at the wrong time of the day, it would take me 2 hours to go see her. Now, one of the reasons why I hesitated on getting a property is because I thought I was going to get married. And so my attitude was that why buy a property and then get married and I got to get another property? But I didn't get married. So what I realized that I should have just bought the property, and then if I got married, dealt with that situation of the properties at that particular time, and then maybe I could have rented one out and got another one, however. But I'm thinking, well, if I'm thinking I'm going to get married, why get the property now? And then I got to try to get another property once I get married. So I hesitated on securing a property, and that was my fault. Then once the market starts to move up, you realize you've been priced out because now you don't make enough to deal with the new pricing. And what this Atlanta market has done now is anything that's halfway decent in this area from a townhouse standpoint that's not really old, you're probably looking at north of $350,000, maybe to $400,000, right? Anything in the Vinings, you're looking at maybe north of $500,000 to live in. And that is because I sat around and waited instead of securing a property when I could. And that's what I want to get people to understand. The way they're moving real estate values currently, you got to try to figure out what is your game plan to get a property in a certain amount of time. Sitting around waiting to get a property is not something I would recommend because even if they raise the rates, if the demand stays there, the property values are going to keep going up, right? The market may soften a little bit, but I don't see this market totally collapsing. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying I don't see it. Then that moves now into the rental market because people like myself that was looking to buy, now they may not get moved into the rental market. However, you got more people in the rental market than you actually have inventory that exists. So what do they do now? Then they move the rent up. And we're seeing this all over the Southeast, especially in Orlando. And I'm going to kind of show you about that. I know properties in Orlando that really 3 years ago, they'd have been lucky to get $700, $800 for those properties. Now they want like $1,300 a month, right? They should be happy to get $700. But because the demand is so high, because everybody's being pushed out of where they last lived, they're able to raise those rents and really get those rents, right? And then I'm going to also show you where people are buying homes at in certain major metropolitan areas. And I'll give you the link so you can look that up because there is a process in which people are securing real estate now that's going to make it very difficult for people to get real estate without paying a premium price the way these people do business. So that's the first thing. Now, let me go ahead and let's get into these videos because I want to show you what's going on in Cobb County, but also what's going on in the Orlando, Florida area. So let me go ahead and get into these. Let me see. Let me get rid of that. Let me go into here. Okay, Cobb County family say they not wanted. And let me get rid of my audio.
Homelessness. Poor people are being pushed out of Cobb.
Everything Susan Mealer loves had to be packed in the boxes behind her, including her husband.
It was so disrespectful, that I had to put him in a box, and pack him away like he was nothing.
This urn does not only hold his ashes, but her hope, at least what remains of it, after Azure Apartments posted this on Mealer's door.
Basically, if you have the Section 8 voucher, we don't want it.
A 60-day notice to leave. We will be terminating your current lease. Sue became homeless.
It really does feel illegal because too many people are going through this. They're losing their homes. If you don't have a place to stay, then you're losing your jobs, your car.
The grandmother says she regularly paid rent of roughly $700. The letter suggests she did not get the boot because of a lack of payment, instead because of the type of payment. We are not participating in the renewal of any MHA lease, also known as Marietta Housing Authority leases, the local division of the Federal Housing Program, or Section 8.
where are we going to go?
About 10 minutes away, Mom Cynthia Johnson.
It's not getting any better. It's getting worse.
She relies on Section 8 too, but after 65 calls, she could not find an area apartment willing to accept it.
I was on the verge of having a stroke because I've never had to experience this in my life.
Across the U.S., families can seek assistance to help pay for their rent. But what good is the program if landlords refuse to accept it? What good is the program if there's a penalty for refusing to accept it?
Mealer and Johnson's stories are no mere coincidence. Instead, it's part of a pattern we uncovered in Marietta. We went undercover and we were turned away 17 times. This is a legal form of discrimination, at least in Marietta and all of Cobb County, says Georgia State University law professor Courtney Anderson.
If you want to kind of market your property in a certain way, you might not want to be seen as an affordable housing property, an ongoing bias about stigmatizing. And so it really complicates the safety net that's meant to put in place to protect everyone in society.
Not everybody who gets Section 8 is a bad tenant.
Being kicked out like Mealer, being turned away like Johnson, it's illegal in the city of Atlanta, the only metro local government to have housing legislation against source of income discrimination, a law Marietta tenants have repeatedly begged for in Cobb County for the past year.
Imagine one day someone knocks on your door and puts you and your kids outside with no fault of your own. Nowhere, you have nowhere to go.
Okay, so that's the issue in Cobb County. So what we saw in the city of Atlanta, you can't do that. But in Cobb County, they don't have, like, I guess, set-asides, or they don't have it to where it's mandatory that the actual landlords take that Section 8. And one of the reasons I know that particular apartment complex that they're talking about, no disrespect to the people that own it, but what I think they're doing is they're getting people out of there because they're probably getting rid of the remodel and raise the rate, because the whole Cobb County area is now starting to be heavy much in demand because you're relatively really close to the city. You're right outside the perimeter, right? So you don't have to worry about with the traffic of Atlanta, but you can be relatively easily to get into Atlanta. So if you got to work, you want to run your errands, you want to go clubbing, you want to go shopping, whatever you want to do, then you can bounce right back out to Cobb. And when I was living in Cobb, nobody really wanted to stay out there. Everybody wanted to be in Sandy Springs. They wanted to be in Dunwoody. They wanted to be in the Buckhead area. Now everybody's trying to move to Cobb County. That's become like the hot place to stay now. So we're seeing real estate rates going up. And to give somebody 60 days to try to find somebody, and they're trying to find a place to live through a voucher, can be very difficult. But the landlord sees it as it's not the issue. And I can't blame the landlord. They know they can get more money for this property now. So then therefore their attitude is, why won't I take market for this property if I can get it? And the issue is that if you have become accustomed to just giving them that Section 8 voucher, right, and thinking that that's going to be good, when they pull the rug out from under you, you don't know what to do. And now you got to try to find 60 days to find something. So they may have to move way out, or try to move back into the city. The problem is that where are you going to live? Because you're living in Cobb County because you believe that the environment's going to be a little bit better than maybe living inside the city of Atlanta. And what I've been telling people for days is that what they're going to do actually inside the perimeter is they're going to make it to where if you probably don't make $100,000 or more a year, you're probably not going to be able to afford to live in the city. And any place that you can afford, you probably won't want to live there. It'll be just such a bad area. This is what I want people to understand. The way they're moving this economy, if you cannot afford to pay it, you're just going to take the brunt. They're not really offering any services for people that can't afford. Right? As of right now, they're really not offering these services. What they did with this pandemic is essentially, they call it the Great Reset. They're 100% correct. They essentially wiped the slate clean and said, okay, we're going to kind of restart everything. But where they're restarting everything is at a price point that most people can't figure out how to get there. And what I was telling a guy 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, it's a brother up in Philly. He's been on Erica's program too, called Coach Carter. And I told him, I said, man, I'm going to work really, really hard. Because I said, I think that most people not going to realize what's really going on till like maybe 2021. So I said, I'm just working, trying to make money, because I realize that a lot of people are going to realize in 2021 that they really is behind the 8 ball financially, because they feeding you all this stimulus to get you to kind of sit back and think everything's gravy, but it's not. Really, you in a bad financial situation because you need the $1,500. You need that $1,200. And behind the scenes, they position in this game to keep raising everything up. Now let's go into the next video because now we're going to go into the actual state of Florida. I want to show you this. Let me stop that screen.
Orlando, making housing even more unattainable for regular folks. News 6's Nadine Yanis continues our boomtown coverage, speaking to experts about what's behind the increase and families who are struggling to pay rent.
Since January of this year, rent has gone up more than 20% here in Central Florida. It's the highest rent hike in decades, and families are feeling it. In fact, we spoke to one mom who actually had to get a new job just so she could afford her rent.
I'm really excited that I started this new job.
Nadia Jacino wasn't just looking to advance her career.
Randomly looking for jobs, and it popped up.
She needed this job to pay rent.
I really needed this job really, really bad.
Because this week, her rent went up to more than $1,600.
My rent before was $1,460, and now it'll be $1,625 this month coming up. Yeah, so I've had to okay, where do I cut? Boom, boom. And that's where I decided to get a new job.
And in fact, her 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Four Corners was the best deal she could find.
I was like, I'm going to renew because I don't have the money to move to another place.
That's because the Orlando market, including Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Lake counties, are seeing record high rent hikes, more than 20% since January alone, according to Brian Alford with the CoStar Group.
As of today, we're actually up 20.3%. In the last 20 years, the largest year increase that we saw was 2006, which was 7%. So we're already at 3 times that.
So you're saying we have not seen rent hikes like this in more than 2 decades?
We've never seen rent hikes.
And the rent hikes are even higher in neighborhoods like Lake Nona at more than 30% there. And Windermere rents increasing more than 24% this year alone, making the average rent right now $1,587. Why is this happening?
A lot of it owes to the really tight housing sector, which has very low inventory now for the last year and a half due to the pandemic.
The lack of houses for sale driving home prices up. The median cost of a house in July in Orlando up to $320,000.
Which makes it almost impossible for any renters that would normally exit and become homeowners. They're locked in place.
Couple that with the population growth that hasn't stopped during this pandemic.
Looks like we've gotten a little bit of a boost in Orlando since the pandemic started.
Leaving renters reeling.
They just need to think of middle class.
Working class.
The working class, yeah. Because $50,000, $60,000 a year, yes, that's good money. Where's the affordable? Where is it? Because everywhere I go and you look, everything is over $1,500, and that is not affordable at all.
And experts believe rent will continue to increase throughout the rest of the year, hitting an average of $1,600 by the end of the year. In Orange County tonight, I'm Nadine Yanis, getting Results News 6.
And I'm Greg Wormuth. Housing and rent prices are soaring in Orlando, in Tampa, Jacksonville, and Miami, but we didn't hear a peep about them during the governor's State of the State address. Nick Pampantonis is live in Orlando after asking several people what it will take to get Tallahassee's attention. Nick.
You know, leaders call this the Freedom State, and while few people can afford a condo overlooking Lake Eola like these, the freedom to pick a place or a neighborhood that ticks even half the boxes on your list is slowly being taken away by those rising prices. And leaders say there is one way that you can get politicians to start paying attention to this issue if you care about it, and that is by making some noise.
We will protect the rights of individuals to live their lives free from the yoke of restrictions and mandates.
Governor DeSantis using his State of the State address Tuesday to raise his national profile, laying out a legislative agenda that tackles subjects like critical race theory, election security, and immigration.
Florida should not be made to bear the burden of our federal government's lawless open border policies.
But nowhere in his 2,600-word speech did the governor mention an issue close to the hearts of many Floridians.
You shouldn't be having to have 2 or 3 other people live with you just to be able to make rent.
Central Florida's cost of living skyrocketed in 2021. The average one-bedroom apartment in Orlando costing 38% more, the average house 20%. It's the same situation or worse in Tampa, Jacksonville, and Miami. University of Central Florida politics professor Aubrey Jewett says the lack of any mention of the topic Tuesday is a bad sign for people hoping Tallahassee jumps in to rescue them.
Okay, so what we're seeing is that the government of the state of Florida at this current time doesn't see this as an issue. And they're dealing with this critical race theory, I think election security and something else. So these are the issues that DeSantis feels like is important to his constituency. Okay, a lot of people are moving to the Florida. And what we're going to see in Florida, and this is just part of a geographical trend, is they're trying to replace the people that were currently living in Florida with another group of people. I think once a lot of those people realize how Florida actually operates from a really a environmental standpoint, they're going to find out whether or not they want to actually live in the state of Florida. Everything looks good now because you haven't been through a lot of the weather cycles and the weather patterns inside the state of Florida. But I think a lot of people that are moving to Florida think that this some, conservative Valhalla are going to find out when DeSantis moves on to his next situation. And now you actually have to live in the state of Florida, and you got to deal with the weather situations in Florida. You got to deal with the actual Florida attitude that they're going to kind of try to determine whether or not this is a place that they want to stay. The issue is that you bought a house here, so now you got a sunk cost in the state of Florida. But there's a massive amount of what I think they're trying to do is take the people that are currently living there and replace them with this new group of people. But those new group of people that are living there, they're going to find out whether or not they're really built to live in the state of Florida, because you got to kind of be built for it, and you got to be built for everything that comes with it. And what I think a lot of these people are going to find out over time is that Florida residents are going to start to look to prey on them, right? Because their economic situation is not going to be what they want it to be. And they're going to see these people as a source of a come up, because they're going to be able to tell immediately that these people are not really from the state of Florida. And that's what I'm worried about, because everybody's running down here because they think this is the great place to be. But you got to really be built to live in the state of Florida. There's a lot that comes with living, just like there's a lot that come with living way up north, or there's a lot that come with living on the West Coast. You got to be worried about some of the environmental and the geographic issues with that. However, the pricing in places like Orlando, Tampa, especially Jacksonville, I'm going to kind of show you that they're going up. People always move to Florida because they used to say the cost of living is so low. So if you're coming from up north to northeast, you can take your pension, you can take your retirement, you can take your 401k money that you earn, you could come down to Florida and you could live a lot cheaper than you could live if you was living up north, right? Because the cost of living was so low. Why? Because Florida don't really pay a lot of money. I'm from Orlando. Orlando is a tourist city. The majority of people that are working in Orlando, no disrespect to them, they're not skilled and they're not highly educated, because they don't need you to be skilled to be highly educated to work in the tourist industry. If you're just going to collect tickets at Disney, you don't need a lot of skills. You don't need a lot of education. If you're just going to be a ride attendant at Disney, you don't need a lot of skills. You don't need a lot of education. And these weren't jobs that were going to teenagers. Why? Because these theme parks run all throughout the day. They're not just weekend theme parks. Therefore, a lot of people that was filling these particular positions, they don't need a lot of education. They don't need a lot of skills. As a result, they don't make a lot of money. Now that we're bringing this new influx of people are coming in, and they're coming in with a lot of money, and they're driving the market up with their demand on properties, the people that are living there can't afford to live there anymore. And I think that the government is being very irresponsible as to how they're managing this situation, because one thing about Florida people is we're not just going to sit back and just be broke. We're going to go find us some money. And I don't think people from other parts of the country realize that. And then we're going to have a whole nother scenario of what's going on, because you're going to have so many people that don't have anything. and they're going to be looking at this other group of people that came into their area and they have everything, right? So that's what I want people to really understand. But the renting cost in the state of Florida is not going to go down because of the demand and of the government not saying, well, let's create some type of policy to deal with this. Either we're going to build more housing, which is the real issue, or we're going to create some type of stimulus or some type of stipend for people to be able to pay their rent. Now we're going to go into the Jacksonville market because I want you to understand this, because this was something that somebody hit me to. And we're going to talk about the amount of real estate investment in a particular area, because a lot of what we're seeing from a demand standpoint is not really what I would call organic. These are investors, and there's nothing wrong with investors coming into an area if they're looking to get a yield or looking to get a return on their capital. I'm all for that. But in a lot of these particular cities, and I'm going to put the link in the chat, is being driven by what people would call speculators, but I would call real estate investors. And they're one of the reasons why this demand is here. And they also got a lot of corporations coming in and buying property. And I saw this happen to Detroit, I want to say maybe almost 10 years ago, where they came in with tax liens and they bought literally thousands of Detroit properties. There was a really good Vice video on this. I want to say maybe almost 10 years ago. These corporations came in using the tax lien process and they bought up thousands of Detroit properties. And they did it because nobody else wanted to get into that market. So they came in with capital and essentially took the whole market up. And then they're just going to kick back and wait for Detroit to just appreciate. And they're going to slowly but surely get those people out of those properties. And that's what we're seeing in real estate markets all over the country. So let me go ahead and get this slide up real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about. Here's the window. Okay, here's that. Okay, so here's this Washington Post article. It says investors bought a record share of homes in 2021, and it can actually show you where they bought them at, right? So you can just go and type in your metro. So let's look at the Atlanta metro. What we're seeing in the Atlanta metro is these are the hottest areas where 30% of the homes have been bought by investors. So they're saying 25% of the homes purchased in this area last year were bought by investors, more than the typical metro. That's higher than the 2000 rate of 12%. So then we can go to, let's say, Fort Lauderdale area, 15%. Let's go to Miami, Florida. 24% of the homes was bought by investors, right? So looking at this Miami area, they're buying this up. So where you see the dark brown is where you're seeing the most amount bought by investors. Let's go to, let me see. I don't want to go there. I wanted to go to Charlotte. Where's that at? Let's go to Charlotte. 25% of the homes in Charlotte are being bought by investors, more than the typical metro. That's higher than the 2000 rate of 11%. So we're seeing in the Charlotte area. And I was telling somebody, I have family in Gastonia, right? We didn't have the understanding that we should have been buying up Gastonia. So 43% in this zip code was bought by investors. 41% in this zip code was bought by investors. 41% of this zip code was bought by investors. Now, why do you want to buy Gastonia up? Because as Charlotte becomes too expensive, people are going to just take 85 out to Gastonia. It's like a 30-minute drive into Charlotte, right? So you acquire this while it's really, really cheap, right? And then now you got, I forgot what this particular name is. It's not satellite, but it's like an extension of the main city. And then people can live in Gastonia and drive right into Charlotte, right on 85, and you're right inside the city, right? So we didn't know that at that time because I got family in Gastonia, and there was a time, you know, early 2000s, you could have bought lots in Gastonia for $5,000 to $10,000 and just sat on them. Those lots now is worth a lot of money. Let me show you the Orlando area. Let me find it. Here's Orlando, Florida. So 19% of the homes, and let me show you what they're doing. So now I'm from Orlando, right? This is all West Orlando. 32808, 36%. These are areas that people normally wouldn't want to live in, but they're buying all these areas up. I know this Lockhart area, right? 32811, 40%, 43%. All of these areas of West Orlando was areas that people historically wouldn't even want to live in because they felt like it was too violent, right? Now they're buying it up. They can't get enough of it. You know what I'm saying? They can't get enough of it. So a lot of these people, and I did this video in my games, in my Laws of Game, a lot of these people are going to eventually just get displaced out of this area. And I said for a long time is that black people are going to get pushed out of West Orlando. And they're not going to have anywhere to go because they can't go east because those places are already locked up. and they can't go farther west, so they're just gonna have to end up leaving the city, right? Let me go to Jacksonville. I'm gonna kind of show you what I'm talking about. So here's Jacksonville. So here's 22% of homes purchased in the area is purchased by investors. Now, what I want to show you is this, because I want you to see the correlation. Okay, North Jacksonville was considered the area that a lot of people didn't want to live in. Okay, when I say north, I mean north of the downtown area. This is the area that's being bought up the most, is this north and this west side. You also got this side right here. What you can do is you can look at the poorest zip codes in Jacksonville. Let me zoom this in for you. So poorest zip codes in Jacksonville. We got 1, 2, 3's down south, 4 and 5. So first zip code, poorest area is 32209. We go back to here and we can go to the zip code 32209. That's this Grand Park area, right? That's one of the most highest bought up. 54% of investors bought up 54% of that zip code, 32209. Let's go to the next zip code, 32254, 32254, and see can we find that. Here's the other one, 43%, 32254. So the number one and the number two poorest areas in the city of Jacksonville are being purchased up by investors, right? They bought almost half of the zip code. And this one, this is almost half again. It's a little over half. Let's go to the next one, 3228. Let's see, can we find that? 3228. Where's that at? That's 3221. So we can't find that one. I don't want to waste all the time. But what I want to show you is that they're buying these particular areas up because historically nobody wanted to live in these areas, right? The values was really, really low. And what you're looking at in Jacksonville is these are nice areas because you off the St. John's. Now, you may not think it's a big deal to live off the St. John's. And I don't think it's a big deal to live off the St. John's because I'm from Florida. But from somebody that's from up north to live off of a property of water and it's not going to be freezing cold, that can be attractive to them. You know, it took me a long time to realize that because I'm Florida, going to the beach is not a big deal. But being able to go to the beach when you want to is a big deal from somebody that's from a landlocked state. But I want to show you something else on Zillow. Let me go ahead and get back to here. Let me go back to the StreamYard. Let me get rid of that. Let me share this screen. Okay, so we got recently sold homes in Jacksonville. And I want you to look at, and this is something I learned from watching Erica, right? Even though it's just kind of clunky. So I want you to look at the ages of some of these homes, right? This house was built, if we can get to the value of it, was built in 1919, all right? This house was built in 1919. We can just spot these houses. It's an 8-bedroom house, 3-bath, right? This house was built in 1919, right? Let me go here. This $280,000 house. Okay, we just looked at that one, my bad. Let me go, this house is $250,000. This house was built in 1955. A lot of these houses in this area, and I looked at it last night, are early 1900s to the 1950s. And what you saw, if you go to a lot of black areas in the state of Florida, because of segregation, they moved all the black people to one part of the city. And then what they did was they developed other parts of the city, but no development dollars ever went to that part of the city. So for years, what you had was a lot of older homes, and you had no new development dollars going into those homes. And then the black people that had the financial ability, they left to go live somewhere else, whether they left the state, they left the city, or they lived on the other side of the city. What we're seeing now is those areas were so underdeveloped that people are going in and they're buying these properties. But if you look at the age of these properties, they're extremely old properties. We're talking about early 1900s to, like, maybe if you're lucky, maybe the mid 50s, right? And as a result, what I think they're going to do with a lot of these homes is they're going to knock them down. This is 1950, not a bad looking house, but it's an old house. So you got to be worried about the electrical. You got to be worried about the plumbing because you're dealing with a very old property. We're in 2022 right now. And you're seeing this with a lot of these older black areas in the state of Florida, is that they're being bought up, but the properties are really, really, really old. And what I think they're going to have is they're going to have a movement where they're just going to knock all these homes down, and they're going to just do rebuilding of these particular areas. But if you look at this area on the map, you're right by the St. John's. So all of this is riverfront. This is all riverfront. But these were some of the poorest areas in the city of Jacksonville, right? Same thing across. All of this is riverfront. So historically, nobody wanted to live here. But now this is becoming very much in demand. Look at these homes. Where was this home built? This home was built in 1924. So nobody wanted to live in these houses. But now you got riverfront property, right? That's very much in high demand. And you got a lot of investors going in and buying these properties. So they may look to remodel it, but a house that built in 1924, you're probably going to have a lot of issues with this house. So it may just make sense just to knock it down and put a whole new property up on it. But now you 3 blocks away from the riverfront. Then what you'll see them starting to do once they start raising these property taxes is they'll start building commercial stuff all up and down that riverfront. If I can get this screen to stop up. They'll start building commercially all up and down this riverfront. And then it'll be so expensive, you'll never be able to get back into this particular area ever again. And so that's what's going on, is that the housing market shot up. People that normally was looking to rent, now they can't buy. So they push back into the rental market. The people that was forced to rent because they never made enough money to buy, and they wouldn't pull their money together with a bunch of people to buy, they're now being forced out of the rental market. And I think a lot of us are going to have to readdress our living situation, because we bought into this narrative that, well, you know, you're not a successful person unless you have your own place. And I think that we need to maybe try to readdress that, because maybe people need to start looking at living together. And I know that's the issue for a lot of us, because we really don't like each other. But maybe we need to consider what's going to be a solution to our problem is living together and figuring out how we can put our money together, right, to where we can live in a decent place, okay, and not have to pay arm and a leg, because a lot of us have been conditioned to where you show that you're successful by having your own place. It's going to be difficult if they keep raising that rent up. Second, the mistake a lot of us made is that some of us were very successful financially, right? And we dropped the ball, and we never went back to these old areas and bought these areas up. We never brought new economic money or new development money into these areas. We let them get depressed. And now what people are doing is they coming in, they buying the whole neighborhood up. And because we never thought on this level, we're now going to be out of position. They're going to run that area back up. And we still going to be on the outside looking in, but we got our one little property out in the suburbs, and we think we did it. I'm not saying we did anything wrong, because many of us didn't know any better, but we're starting to see now the game that they're playing. And you're dealing with a group of people, and it's not to point the finger at any one person. However, they will let an area sit underdeveloped for 50, 60 years. And they'll let the property values just keep going down. And then what they'll do now is they'll come in with a lot of capital, and they'll just buy everything up. And we got every reason why that's a bad area. We don't want to live there, yada, yada, yada. But we find out that we could have bought into these particular areas for pennies on the dollar. And that's what I want people to start thinking about. Where is an area, if it's not in your city, if it's in a neighboring city to you, where you can now try to get in for the low, and maybe you and your people can start accumulating some property? Because one of the biggest challenges is that we're in an accumulation phase right now. And anytime you're in an accumulation phase, the prices go up. You see the same thing in the stock market. If there's a lot of demand on one stock, the stock price goes up. If you're already in the stock and there's an accumulation phase, you see your value of your stock start to go up. Why? Because everybody's accumulating. We're seeing an accumulation phase in the real estate market now. The problem is that if you're out of the market, when you try to get into the market while we're accumulating, you're going to have to pay the demand, because while we're in an accumulation phase, for years, we were not in an accumulation phase. We were like a stock with no volume that traded flat. So many of our old neighborhoods were like a stock that had no volume on the ticker, and it traded flat. And we believed every narrative in the world as to why we shouldn't invest in these areas. We believed every narrative in the world why we should not invest any money into these areas. Now that they're accumulating in these areas, you see that they're running these prices up. So these homes in Jacksonville that I showed just worth around $200,000. Let me tell you something. I know the Jacksonville area because I'm from Florida. That's a lot of money to pay for a home in Jacksonville that was built in 1924. I'm from Florida, so I know what's going on. That is when I was coming up in Florida, nobody ever said, I'm getting ready to go to Jacksonville. Nobody said that. Nobody said, hey, man, I got a weekend off. I got some money in my pocket. Let's go to Jacksonville. Let's willie out. Nobody talked like that. So the whole game is changing now with people now looking to move into Jacksonville. So all those years with North Jacksonville, nobody wanted to live there. It was laying dormant. It was laying stagnant. That was the time to start accumulating. So then now when the demand goes into that particular area, because you know it's riverfront property, and a lot of people like to live on the riverfront, especially people that's not from an area, right, where they've been accustomed to living around and near the water, now that property becomes very much in demand. We're seeing the same thing in West Orlando. Nobody wanted to go to West. I'm from West Orlando. People scared to death to come to West Orlando. But now you're seeing that investors are buying it up. Why are they buying it up? Because they finna get rid of it, move everybody out of there. But, I'm from West Orlando. New Yorkers don't even come into West Orlando, right? They don't even come. You will never find nobody from New York in West Orlando. All you see in West Orlando was Black Americans and West Indians. Why? Because they realize they can't really deal with us over there. But now they're going to get everybody out of there. So what we should have been doing all these years is not caring what West Orlando looks like, try to accumulate. Because now that the demand's there, everybody's buying it up. Let me give you an example. I looked at a condo before I left the state. It was in West Orlando. It was a nice condo with a nice complex. I looked up who actually owned the condo through the clerk of courts. It was owned by some people in Venezuela that lived in Caracas. They was on the actual record of ownership. So people are trying to get into West Orlando so bad. You got Venezuelans that don't even live inside the actual country that are buying properties in West Orlando, and it was being managed by a property management group out of Miami. But we're letting people tell us that these areas don't have any value, right? And that's the issue. So I'm here to tell you, the rent is too dang high. It's not going to go down. You got to figure out, one, how to generate some more income for yourself. Two, how to try to get a property. So I told people my next 5-year goal is to try to get property and to try to buy a lot of equities, right? I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be hasty in what I'm doing, but I've changed my thinking because I realized that I'm going to look up and you're going to need $1 million to buy a house in the state of Florida. And that's just how it's going to be. No matter where you live, you're going to have to live way out like in Haines City or Palaca somewhere. And that's why I think a lot of Black people is going to move, is they're going to be living way out in the country. They're not going to be able to live around any of the major cities because they're not going to be able to afford it. 3, you may have to reconsider your living conditions. This idea that everybody's supposed to live by themselves to try to show their independence, right? I think that's not going to work in the future. I think people are going to have to try to figure out how to live around each other. And we got to deal with the fact that we've been programmed to not be able to deal with each other, right? And to have so much disdain. And everybody has figured out how to live with each other and work with each other. And they're using that collective mentality to come up while we on the YouTube talking about how we so good because we all by ourselves, right? And that's getting us beat over the head economically. Because one person by themselves, even with a lot of money, is a nobody compared to 5 people that's working together that got some money, right? Because I looked at a condo that was owned by Venezuelans, which are Latinos, being managed by another group of Latinos, right? And they working together to control real estate in a particular area. I'm not even finna go into the fact that we got a lot of Brazilians on the west side and they gonna start accumulating property. And so West Orlando is not going to be a Black and Black Caribbean part of Orlando the next 5 to 10 years. It's primarily going to probably be Brazilian and Venezuelan, right? Because they moving up from Miami because Miami's starting to get too expensive. But see, they move together, right? We believe we can't live around each other. We can't deal with each other, right? In an economy where everybody's working together. So that's what I wanted to talk about. It is a market-based conversation because we're dealing with supply and demand. And anytime you're dealing with supply and demand, if there's more demand on something and the supply is low, the price is going to start to go up. And either you're going to meet the price or you're just going to get pushed out of the market. You feel me? And that's how this going. So if we got any questions, hit me up in the comments and I'm going to read the comments and we're going to get up on out of here because I got to get into the gym before it close up. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I believe that. You know, East New York is still affordable. You know, East New York is still affordable. But I wonder if people willing to buy East New York. But if I had to break, because a guy used to fix my, he was a mobile mechanic when I was living in Atlanta. He was a younger dude out of BK. And for people that don't know what BK is, where I'm from, we call Brooklyn BK. And he told me in BK, he said there's a certain ethnic group that identify around their religion. He said they buying up all of Brooklyn. So he said that's the reason why he had to left, because he said his family didn't own their property. And so they just kept raising the rent to where he just had to get out. You know, but if you look at like Brownsville at one time was dominated by one ethnic group that left. And then black people started to move in because it was so cheap to live there. Eventually, Brownsville could become the place to live again. But like I said, is that we've been taught to leave the place and to never look back and turn our back on it. And then what they do is they let the values just get so low. And then now that they want to come in and buy it up, they buy it up. And we're not taught to think on that level, because we're taught the less of us is in an area, the higher the value is. Instead of trying to figure out how can we get some responsible people to all sit down in one area and to bring that value up. Or how do we manage an area that's lower income as long as it benefits us? Because let me give an example. Everybody else will manage lower income black people, and they'll just sit back and make money off of us. We've been taught that we shouldn't have nothing to do with lower income black people, even from a financial standpoint. See what I'm saying? Because we think any association with them is negative. I'm not saying that you got to put yourself in a dangerous situation or you got to do something that's detrimental, but other people will rent, do business, do commerce with lower income black people as long as they keep control of the situation. We've taught we shouldn't just have nothing to do with that scenario. And that hurts us long term, because what? We can't make sure that a situation is halfway decent because we don't have any control. But that's just my own opinion. But that's a good comment. So appreciate the super chat. There's a lot of money keeping us apart. 10 single. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I just think that's going to change. I don't down nobody. That's why I don't down anybody that lives with their family. If I find out somebody lives with their family, that don't mean anything to me, because it don't make sense to live by yourself, especially if you're renting and you're paying all this money to this person. So you got a family of people. Everybody got their own spot. Y'all could come together and get your own place and own it, and then use that now as your base of operations to where we now start accumulating more properties. But we've bought into this idea that everybody having their own place is part of really our masculinity or part of our femininity. I'm a real woman, I'm a real man because I got my own place and I don't deal with nobody else. Right? And I think that's that Americanism that we bought into. That's part of our experience here, where people come from other cultures and they don't have that Americanism. They bring their culture to America, which is people live together. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's hurting us. And, you know, if you got to live by yourself, that's what you feel like you got to do. But, you know, you got people that have spent 30, 40 years living by themselves and don't have nothing to show for it. And you could have been living with somebody else and building something. But, you know, it is what it is. A lot of it is conditioning. Yeah, they offered in the 1920s. Yeah, I saw after Katrina how a lot of people bought homes there. A lot of corporations bought homes there, and they started remodeling them, and they drove the rents up. So Issa Jallo, I appreciate it. Yeah, that's the thing in Florida. That's the thing. It was a lady that lived on my block growing up, and she had a property on our block, and she lived up north, and we would watch the property on the block for her, and it was retirees. And then when she came down south in the winter, she would live there, and she ran that all year. And that was something that was normal for us growing up. And it was an older white couple, and they lived pretty much on an all black block. And they did that. We call them snowbirds in Florida. And they come down. And it works because, like I said, a lot of people in the Northeast, their income is so much higher. They come down to Florida and they can live a lot better because of the income disparity, because Florida doesn't really pay a lot of money. It just doesn't. You know, the service economy drives the wages down so that everybody else gets paid less. So if you're used to making New York money and you bring the proceeds of that New York or that Beantown money, or that Philadelphia money, or that, you know, that Northeast money, and you bring that down to the state of Florida, or that Chicago money, you bring that down to Florida, you're going to live a lot better life because you're used to making so much. You know, nobody in Orlando really makes $100,000 a year like that. Just doesn't happen. In New York City, a lot of people make $100 grand a year. You know, so people don't really understand the income disparity. So as prices start to go up in Orlando, it's very extreme to people there because they're just not used to making the money. So that's something that's really normal. Yeah, I believe that. I really do believe that. Navy vet, I will put it in the description. Yeah, Gastonia, what's the name off from there too? Dude used to play basketball for the Lakers back in the day. I believe Julius Erving from Gastonia. But I got family from there. But, you know, when we first started knowing about that early 2000s, nobody wanted to really live there. But now everybody's trying to move there because it's so close to Charlotte. So that would have been the move. But Fred Durst did well for himself. You know, he had his run. Okay, so he says Nashville might be the move before they build a new Titans stadium. It might be. Need to check that out. Yeah, definitely. People don't know, but they're going to find out. Miami is a bubble, and Miami is really inhabited by people that are not from Florida. You get north of Miami, you start to get into that Palm Beach, that Pompano. It's a totally different environment, that Broward County. The whole eastern coast of Florida is a different environment. You're dealing with them coastal towns. The interior part of the state is a different environment. Polk County, even Duval County, because Jacksonville is one city in a really, really big county. Duval is one of the biggest counties in the country. Orange County is a massive county. Hillsborough County is a massive county. I just think a lot of people don't really, and like I said, also, you got to deal with the weather. A lot of people moving to Florida have never dealt with a hurricane. You just got to deal with it. And what I tell people all the time is that if you live in Florida, you should assume you're going to have a hurricane every decade, if not more, but pretty much every decade. And you got to realize, and we saw like Hurricane Andrew when it came through Miami, hurricanes just take everything from you. You know, and even though you have insurance, you just have to deal with the fact that you don't have a house anymore. These are the things that you got to deal with in the state of Florida because of where it's situated at on the planet. And dealing with hurricanes and things of that nature, dealing with lightning storms, learning how to drive in the rain. It's a lot that comes with it. So a lot of people is running down there because of these pandemic situations, but they got to just really ask themselves, are they really built to live down there like they think they are? Because there's a lot that comes with it. You know, and it's very hot. Yeah. There was a story about how, and I don't want to misquote this, how the Army Corps of Engineers is not doing some kind of work in Miami because they've already assumed that in a certain amount of years, because of the water rising, it's just not going to be there anymore. And I think a lot of people that are buying down that far down south, especially close to the coastline, are not factoring that in. Now, the mayor is saying that we're going to address this issue, but I don't know how they address it because Miami already has flooding issues. Miami deals with severe flooding, right? Because they never should have done that much development in the state. The southern part of Florida is really supposed to all be swamp. What they did was they drained the swamp to build all that development. The issue is it's still supposed to be a swamp. So when it rains really hard, it floods. Why? Because it's supposed to be a swamp. And that's just part of living in Florida. And that's why I told people, to me, the northeast part around the Panhandle is what people should be looking to move into. But nobody wants to live there because it's not developed. But where you still get the beach, you still get the heat from Florida, but you're not living in the swamp. You know, because if you look at Florida on the map, everything west of Miami is swampland. It's all swamp. And I don't think people are really wrapping their head around that because you don't see it while you're in Miami. You just feel like you're on the beach, but you're really in the swamp. Yeah, definitely. They're going to squeeze a lot of people out because those people's living in that area in Cobb County because it's a nicer area than living inside the city of Atlanta and they Section 8 available properties. But now they're going to get squeezed out. And if the city doesn't mandate that you got to take it, then you got to figure out somewhere else to live. You know, but it's rough getting a 60-day notice and then you got to try to figure out where you're going to go because you got Section 8. It's rough. But, you know, you got to deal with, I feel sorry for that woman, her being a widow, because she may have been dependent upon her husband's income. But that's why I try to tell people. One of the reasons why I never try to fall out with my family, I've had issues, but I never try to really just all the way fall out with my family is because I believe you're going to need your family one day. But we've been so conditioned that everybody's just this independent operator. And life really don't work that way. Someday you're going to need some help. So, Dom, see, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I believe you, Erica. I should have just went and got the property and dealt with the two houses at a later date. So I see that now. So that's why. But it'll change your mentality because then you get to the point that, well, you don't even care what somebody tells you. You just focus on what you focused on. So to me, it's like an either or. It's hard to get that moderation. Yeah. But the issue was that when it was in Summer Hill, they never developed Summer Hill. And the people around Summer Hill never developed that area. Because Summer Hill, you know, wasn't the best area to live in. You know, so that was the issue when the stadium was down south. Yeah, Smyrna's, I keep telling, Smyrna's like the best kept secret in the city. It was. It's not anymore. Everybody knows about it. You know, Dunwoody's also nice. People get, I was telling somebody the other day, I never wanted to live in Buckhead when I lived in Atlanta. To me, Buckhead's overrated. To me, the best area to live in Atlanta was Smyrna, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, and then maybe Roswell. You're still close to everything, but you're not so far out. It's going to take you an hour to get into the city, right? But you're so far away from everything, and it's a nice area. Southern Cobb County is really, really, really nice. The Vinings is really, really nice. There's a lot of areas that people don't know about, I guess, because they just listen to what rappers tell them or what the so-and-so in crowd tells them. But I know the city of Atlanta. I know where to go into where you can just be chill and you can still enjoy yourself. And you got to deal with a lot of that nonsense because I didn't have any issues with crime in the Smyrna. Had no issues. You know, it was real safe out there. And it wasn't like a heavy police force. It's just nobody was really into that type of stuff. People just mind their business. Erica, I appreciate the super chat. So that's through. So let me get down to the bottom before we get up on out of here. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I have goals also. I feel you. Okay, Volker, you just keep typing the same comment over and over again. Yeah, I don't know anybody in Louisiana. I just drove through the state. So $1 Billion Smile, I would maybe reach out to maybe some people in your network, but I don't know anything about Louisiana. I've been in New Orleans one time. I just drove through the state. So I don't know anything about the property values there. Yeah, that could be true. That could be true. But if they're bonding for capital preservation, that means they don't believe the area is going to go lower. But what's happening out is the area is going up. You know what I'm saying? So they don't believe that area is going to go any lower. But they believe the area is either going to maintain for capital preservation and either go up. They don't believe it's going to continue to just go down. And what we're seeing is that a lot of these areas is going up. You know, so they're getting a gain on their money because you want to get some type of gain because you're losing money because of the rate of inflation. I don't know who I know that lived in. I don't know who I know that lived in Nashville, but I know somebody that lived in Nashville. Okay, Fayetteville. I was looking at Raleigh too. I just don't like the cold, but Atlanta's not the warmest place in the world, so that might be the spot. My issue is I don't like cold weather. Okay, Erica talking about I live in white girls, one own house, one making 95, one making 150. Yeah, that's how I go. But, you know, Erica, a lot of us have bought into we got to live by ourselves, you know, and I get it. You know, a lot of us, that's how we've been raised, to just get my own spot, but it's just so expensive because you're paying out of the nose for everything. And I see other groups of people, man, I used to live in Tampa. I had a 2-bedroom by myself when I was in school. I lived next door to some Serbians. It was a father, the mother, and the son, and they all lived in a 2-bedroom next door to me. And the daughter would come over there every day from work. So they was all breaking that rent down. I'm next door to them paying out of the nose, and I got a 2-bedroom, 1 bath all by myself. You know, but that's just how we condition. Yeah. And you used to seeing AK is a lot of people that can't afford Miami, they're going to push up to Broward, and they're going to push up to Palm Beach County, and they're going to raise those prices up there. Because I've seen a lot of videos on how people in those areas that was on fixed income can't afford to rent anymore either. So everybody that's getting pushed out of Miami is going up. That's why everybody moved into Miramar. I remember when you could get into Miramar easy, nobody wanted to live there. It's hard to get into Miramar now. And Miramar is a nice area. You know, but it used to be anybody could live in Miramar because nobody wanted to stay there. Not everybody's trying to stay in Miramar because they can't afford Miami. Good deal. That's how you do it. And I ain't mad at you. Something I want to talk about. This shaming of men, and GH, I don't know if you're a man, so I'm not talking about you personally, but this shaming of men because they got roommates, I think is detrimental, because what we're telling men to do is that you got to have your own place, and you may be overpaying just to have your own place if you can't afford to buy a house right now. So this idea that you're not a man if you don't have your own spot, but you maybe can't afford to get your own spot at this current time. You maybe cannot afford to get a mortgage at this current time. You may have some situations that you're trying to fix. But the fact that you're living with somebody else means that you're less than a man. Like I said before, is that we've ingested a lot of these narratives that are going to hurt people to try to build themselves up because they're paying to live a very expensive lifestyle. So we tell everybody, hey, cut your expenses. Don't eat out. Don't go to Starbucks. You know, don't buy expensive cars. But we don't talk about people living in a shared living space as another way to save money, because we still bought into this mentality is that, well, you're not a man or you're not a woman if you don't have your own spot. And I know a lot of people complain about how much it costs for them to live, working 2 jobs just so they can live somewhere. I know a lot of chicks like, man, I'm tired of doing all this by myself, because for them to live in a nice, safe place, they got to work 2 jobs. You know, we've created this narrative. So I just think it's detrimental for women to tell dudes, well, if you got a roommate, you less of, right? Because then you're telling that dude he should pay more money to somebody else just to impress you. But what does impressing you do for him long term? And we need to start having these kind of conversations, because other groups of people, they live together. Everybody just live together and they come up together. But, you know, we don't understand that. Yeah, house hacking is important. It's a guy that he says he don't do a house. He has a house hacking course. Yeah, East New York, because that's the only place they haven't gotten into yet. So I think they're gonna come out to East New York next, and that's the place nobody wants to live. But I'm telling you, if you can get in there, I think it could be the spot, because they've come out to every other place except East New York. But if you actually do the research, you realize who lived in East New York before the current people that's living in East New York now, because there's some serious gangsters from a certain ethnic group, and they all come out of Brownsville, right? But they're not going to tell that story, right? Just like a lot of people don't want to tell the story about how it used to be none but Italians in the Bronx, because John Gotti from the Bronx, quiet as kept. Okay, so I think, okay, urban homesteader. So that's a great comment. Yeah, so I think like Ackworth can be a problem. Marietta can be an issue. But I lived in Smyrna, and I know how to get into the city. Taking Atlanta Road that now turns into Marietta Road. I come in over there by Georgia Tech, and I'm in the city. Because the thing about me is I'm going to try to figure out how to take a back road before I jump on that highway. Because that's where I'm from. We don't use the highway. We use the side street and the back street. So I learned how to get into the city because I used to go to Antioch, which is right by the bluff. I used to be in East Point College Park, but I did have to take 285 to get there. But I learned in Smyrna how to get inside downtown Atlanta by coming in the west side through Atlanta, take Marietta, and then shoot through the middle of the city. And I learned how to do that. And then I just started moving around. And then another thing I would do is I would just wake up and just drive residential on like a Sunday to figure out how the roads worked. And that's how I really learned how to move around that city. But yeah, so that's the issue. But yeah, if you start going to like Marietta, especially Ackworth, trying to come in the morning, you guys deal with a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic, especially out there in Ackworth. A lot of traffic, you know, because the traffic is so bad. But yeah, I believe you. I believe it's going to keep going up too, most likely. Yeah, that's true. Unless they figure out something, some kind of project to where they can deal with that. But the issue, Gene Hammond, is that there's more people living in Florida, and this is something else that people don't want to talk about. Florida can't support all these people. So the problem is that you build on swampland to put housing, and also Florida's going to have a clean water problem because the state can't support the people, especially down south. Florida really should have more people up north than down south, but everybody want to live down south because that's where Miami's at. But the state just can't support them from an environmental standpoint. But they're going to find out when they get down there. They'll find out. That's facts, but that's the thing. But a lot of it, Harris, is that their parents didn't develop anything for the children. So one of the things I was talking to somebody a few years ago was about, you know, we put our kids out at a young age and tell them just to figure it out. And other people set their kids up. So their children don't even leave the house until things is set up a certain way. We have been conditioned that, well, I can go do it all on my own because of income, things of that nature. But I'm going to repeat again. What is your goal? And then why are you spending money outside of anything that's that goal? But I didn't know this type of stuff when I was young. So I moved out real young because I wanted to get my own spot. But in reality, I would have been better sitting in the house and building myself up and then moving out. But see, we so quick, like I say, we identify our masculinity and our femininity by things that are not based on really building wealth or building legacy, in my opinion. And we attach ourselves to this stuff, and then this becomes our identity. So because it's your identity, you don't want to leave it because you've identified with it. So to us, if I make a certain amount of money, I got to have these things, right? Well, those things a lot of times don't mean nothing in 10 years. But I make a certain amount of money, so I got to have these things because that's my identity. And I just think it's detrimental with other groups of people. They don't think like that. They don't look at how much money they make. They look at this, what we're trying to do. And so the money we making is going to help us get there. Not, oh, I make a certain amount of money, so I got to have this, that, and the third. But like I said, we're the most Americanized people inside the United States. So every American trope about rugged individuality, about I'm my own person, we buy into because there's no group that's more Americanized than us because everybody else comes to America with their own culture from their land. Our culture is what we've been taught through mass media. We don't have another culture. So we just buy into all this BS that they feed us that just makes us a consumer of their stuff that they produce. And I just think we're seeing now that it's hurting us on the back end. And I think a lot of people are going to have to accept that living together is going to be the best thing for them and start worrying about, well, I make this amount of money. That means I can't do this, that, and the third. But the question is, what are you trying to do in this world? And then how can you use your money to get there, as opposed to, I got to show my independence by how much money I make. Because I know people from other ethnic groups, they got big money and everybody living in one house. And they caking. I know a dude, I went to his mastermind in the UK. He's a Bengali. This guy was a millionaire. In his culture, you do not move out of the house until you get married. He was living with his parents. He was a millionaire, right? He was able to build a sales operation in a home-based business space. He sold his ass off. He lived with his parents. Why? Because in his culture, you don't move out until you get married. They brought that culture from Bangladesh. So the fact that they live in the UK don't change nothing, right? Because they brought their culture from Bangladesh. So to hit in his culture, it would be improper for him to go get his own place as an unmarried man. That's not proper. But to us, if we making a certain amount of money, we got to show everybody that we getting so much money that I can afford to do everything by myself. In his culture, you nobody by yourself. And even though he make all that money, he's still not bigger than his parents. And his parents are uneducated, hardly make any money. He ain't bigger than his parents. Why? Because they're his parents. They bigger than him. But it's just different cultures.